Can you reach? Do we have the same socks?
We do have the same socks.
Nice.
Yeah, sock buddies. That's a perfect way to start the first time we ever did our 5th episode.
Wow. All right.
Oh, shoot. It won't open because...
Oh, did you run out of juice?
No, I have my fly catcher on it. You can't read my face.
Oh, well, if you need a charging cable.
Okay, yeah, it will in a minute. Thank you.
God. Jesus Christ.
Oh, we need to get it together over here.
We're competent professionals.
Yes. Okay, so there's this. So you introduced me to this person, John Keel, not in the flesh, but just who he is or whatever. And wow,
He's a trip.
I can't even keep up with it. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. One of the most paranoid men in the world, probably.
You think so?
Oh, he had a couple of paranoid breakdowns in the 90s and early 2000s.
Like mental issues or just...
Well, I don't think they're well, I mean, you could consider it mental issues, but because of the research, it's paranormal research and being so close to these paranormal things, just always being hounded by the men in black and by other apparitions.
Yeah.
It would just weigh on him. We can get into that for sure.
Definitely. So I have 2 quotes. They are not from outer space. There is no need for them to be. They have always been here. Weird. And then the other one is, belief is the enemy. Mm-hmm. What the hell is he talking about?
The first one is when he was researching UFOs and the encounter phenomenon. Mm-hmm. He came to the determination that they're not aliens, that it's something else pretending to be aliens. It's some sort of other phenomenon that wears various masks.
Oh, do you think the government will kind of masquerade as an alien form just to... it's like a loophole. It's well, it wasn't us.
right.
But also, that's not even real, bud.
Well, that is one thing.
That's a crazy thought.
Well, I have noticed that there's this guy, Richard Doty, who used to work for Air Force Intelligence, and he used to push stories out into the public that were oh, there's UFOs flying around Wyoming or whatever, because the Air Force was testing some new aircraft. And so he would say it was aliens, just so people wouldn't catch wind of these military projects.
And new technologies.
Yeah. So that's one thing. But I think John Keel was talking about something that was a lot weirder than just the government doing it, because his studies go back centuries. And how
from books?
Yeah, studying books, historical records, things like that. That this phenomenon of aerial beings that come from the sky, they change what they look like depending on what culture they are interacting with. For instance, in Ireland, in the 12th or 13th century, there was a boat, like a ship, a sails made out of wood and all that sort of thing, and it was flying in the sky, and it dropped an anchor down.
What?
Yeah, and the anchor was scraping against the ground, and a sailor pulled himself down the anchor, and it looked like he was underwater as he was coming through the air down to the ground, and all the village people that saw it grabbed him, and they put this guy on trial for being a sorcerer and executed him.
Where was this?
I think this was in Ireland.
Ireland, you said, yeah.
Yeah.
What the heck?
The town started with a K. I can't remember, Kinning or Kenneth or something like that. And
Kinnatini? Oh, that's New York.
And they apparently put that anchor in the church, and it was there for a few centuries, and then it eventually disappeared.
They had physical...
Yeah, they had the actual anchor, apparently, according to this history book that was written in the 16th century.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and there are reports of seeing flying castles, in the medieval era, or temples with wheels on them that the Indians would talk about. They would see an actual stone temple up in the sky. And now today, or in the late 19th century, the 1890s, there was blimps that people would see. and then these blimps would land on the ground, and people would look in, and there'd be like engineers that looked like people, just human beings wearing overalls. Yeah, they're dirigibles. And there'd be like weird piston machines that these engineers would be working on, and then after the witnesses like saw them, and the engineers like looked at them, they asked like, there's this one case where these people saw this dirigible and asked the engineers like, where you're from, and they're like, we're from everywhere, but we'll be in Greece tomorrow. And so it's just like a bizarre thing. And when the blimp took off, they said it shot out faster than a bullet from a gun down into the sky. So like, that's not just a regular blimp, clearly.
No, blimps are mad slow.
Oh, they're super slow. But it was described as a blimp. Like, it looked like it was filled with air and it had weird fins on it and stuff. And this was like, 15
That's
years.
Kind of like the thing I was talking about with the lights, where it goes like.
Yeah. They behave like with super quick and erratic movements.
That's craziness.
And today we see them as like spaceships and flying saucers, hubcaps made out of metal or whatever. So John Keel and another researcher, Jacques Vallée, came to the conclusion that like, I don't think these are aliens. I think this is some other phenomenon that wears different masks. Whatever it's trying. It's like programming us with different ideas, trying to get us to think along certain lines. It's like mental programming.
It's almost like taking like mythological mythological like stories or what are the stories called for like kids, like fables and all of these type of things, and using that as like a mask to be like, you're crazy.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, because
what do you believe in? What those books you read when you were 6?
Yeah,
like I don't know, something like that. Like
yeah, because
it's a magic trick, right? It's sleight of hand.
Yeah,
but on a very large scale.
Yeah,
perhaps I'm ruminating. I'm not saying for sure.
Oh yeah, no, it's because the UFO stories, like you had Amazing Stories, which was a pulp magazine, which I think got its start in the 1920s or 30s, and that had stories about aliens and flying saucers and shit. But the flying saucer phenomenon wasn't really in the popular consciousness until 1947, when Kenneth Arnold saw some flying boomerang-looking things around Mount Rainier, and then people started thinking about that stuff. So it's like, it was in the sci-fi before people started witnessing it out in the sky. So it's like, did the phenomenon take things from these pulp fiction comic books and then use that? Like you were saying, pulling things from fables and myths to like deliberately confuse people or to hide its true nature. It happened to Emperor Constantine in the 4th century AD when he invaded Rome. He was thinking, and all of his advisors were telling him, like, there needs to be a new state religion. Like, if you're going to conquer Rome and become the new emperor of a new civilization, you need to have a new state religion. And he had been thinking about it for months, not knowing, like, what should it be? Like, you can't do the Roman imperial religion anymore because you want to change it. And that's when he and a bunch of his men saw a giant illuminated cross in the sky on the night of the invasion of Rome. And he heard a voice in his head that said, in hoc signo vinces, in this sign you shall conquer. And that's when he decided that the new state religion would be Christianity, and then hence the Catholic Church was created.
Can't believe I've never heard that story.
Oh yeah, it's famous. It's a famous story. The Jesuits love that story. That's like their origin story. That's why IHS is the symbol of the Jesuits.
Oh.
In hoc signo, in this sign.
Oh, okay.
It also is an abbreviation of ichthys, which is Greek for fish, and the age of Pisces and Jesus walking on water. It's all very. It was the age of the fish over the last 2,000 years.
So it's almost like the Chinese New Year.
Kind of. If every 2,000 years.
What age are we in now?
We're between Pisces and Aquarius. Some people say we're already in Aquarius, or we're slowly moving into Aquarius.
Damn.
Yeah, some people say we moved into Aquarius in the 1760s. Other people say we're moving in by the 22nd century because it's like blurry. There's no like direct. If you look at the night sky, where the sun rises during the equinox is the age we're in, and it's like
that's how that works. Oh, that makes so much sense.
So if you look where the sun rises at the equinox, that sign is the age we're in, and it's between Aquarius and Pisces right now.
Whoa!
And it's pretty blurry. It's a big, you know, the sky's fucking big. There's a lot of space between these constellations, so it's like we're not firmly in Aquarius. We're like in that transition.
Yeah, we're in like a little bit of a limbo between the two. What was there an Aries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the one before Pisces. Yeah.
So what period of time was that?
That was
before Jesus, right before Jesus.
Yeah, it was like 2000 BC. It was like roughly 2200 BC.
That's when the floods happened.
Up to 0. That's when the Bronze Age collapse happened.
Like
2200
BC. Oh, no, I have it wrong. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, that would be like 10,000 BC or 12,000.
Well, they were
BC.
saying like there's like, you know, Graham Hancock?
Yeah.
Like did you see his ancient...
I own all of his books. Yeah.
He put out the show on Netflix.
Oh.
Ancient...
I didn't see that.
Catastrophes or something like that. Mm-hmm. Ancient...
Yeah, he's been writing about that shit for 30
what it
years.
Is. Yeah, and he put like a whole show out. It's like an 8-episode like short show or whatever, and he talks a lot about like the floods and how there was like an advanced civilization but extreme catastrophic event of like comets hitting the earth that like destroyed a very like intelligent civilization like only 12,800 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, that's about the time frame that people say Atlantis collapsed.
Yeah,
and the late Pleistocene or whatever ended. The late Ice Age ended at that time.
Mm-hmm. And then it caused like an ice age. I think
it caused the end of the Ice Age.
Oh, it caused the end of it. Yeah, because it melted like all of the snow and everything, and
hence the flooding.
Yeah. And it was just like water.
Yeah, I mean, some people think it was comets. Some people think it was some type of technological activity gone wrong. Some people say it was like a psychic war, that like you can alter the weather and the tectonic activity using your mind. There are a lot of different theories as to what exactly happened.
I have a crazy theory.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this. I don't know if this is off of the
topic.
But
we've already kind of drifted away from John Keel into Atlantis, but it's related. It actually is related.
I feel like it is, right?
Yeah, I can. Yep. I can tie it together. Don't worry.
I know. So this is this crazy theory that I came up with. I don't know if other people have. I don't know. Maybe it's a collective consciousness. So people are from Mars. Like the human race is from Mars.
Yeah, that's pretty popular thought.
They were destroying the planet, and they're like, it's not like gonna last long here. We need to like move. And then they researched Earth, and it had like hella dinosaurs on it, and they're like, we can't just get eaten by these crazy monsters. Let's just fucking nuke that shit, kill them all. Wait a little bit, the planet will terraform or whatever, and then we'll go over there.
Yeah, a lot of researchers think that.
Really? That's a thing?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I ever read... I don't know.
Yeah, I think, one of the guys who probably wrote the most on that would be Richard Hoagland.
You mentioned him last time.
Yeah. He's written a lot about, like, people being on other planets in the distant past. Yeah, people think that we used to live on Mars and that something happened where the core of that planet blew out and it was enormous volcanic activity and basically just destroyed the planet, which is why it's all red and rusted, because that was the core of the planet exploded out onto itself.
Oh, wow. Like from the poles or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Or everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't have a molten core anymore. Mars is a cold and dead planet now because something happened. Yeah, and a lot of iron, the molten iron just shot out onto the surface, and there was a big exodus, and then humans came here. And some people say like, oh, the real natural human circadian rhythm, like your sleep cycle, your sleeping and waking cycle,
is Mars.
Yeah, it's like 25.8 hours, which is like a day, the exact time of a day on Mars.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe,
like an hour or 45 longer.
Yeah, and you have the stories from the Vedic scriptures of...
That's why everyone's like, there's not enough time in the day.
Right, because they're used to having that extra hour and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got the Vedic story of like I can't remember, was it Rama who wanted to kill Ravana, the demon king, who's depicted as a big old lizard, and his demon horde depicted as lizards. And he launched, I don't think it was called the Brahmastra, it was called something else, but it was basically an arrow that he could fire from his Vimana, his like spaceship, that ignited with the power of 10,000 suns and left desolation in its wake. Wow, so it sounds like a nuke.
From his Glocka?
Yeah, right, exactly, from his Glocka. I think in this case it was shaped like a temple.
Oh yeah, I've seen those pictures.
Yeah.
That stuff's so cool.
You know, Ravana is like a lizard demon.
Dude, that's the same thing you were saying before. Like
dinosaurs.
Seeing castles in the sky and shit.
Yeah. And so there's that story that people think like, oh, the dinosaurs were nuked by someone from the sky. You know?
Yeah.
People want to say like Rama was an alien or something. I don't think Rama was an alien. I think he was just a dude.
Who had a lot of technology.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny, right? Because a lot of it is like semantics or just like poor description because you don't know how else to describe it. Like, say you never saw an airplane before in your life.
Right.
And it flies over your house. You'd be like...
Yeah, it's an iron bird.
This dragon just blew past my house. And, like, you'd write all about it. And people are like, dragons aren't real. Dragons were never real. It's like, well, no, it's just like their connection, you know? It's like, I saw castles or a ship flying in the sky. And a guy put an anchor down. And he was a sailor, but in the sky, almost like he's underwater. You know, it's the best way to describe that. But that's not, like it's not literal. It's like a semantic, right? Maybe.
I mean, the medieval case is pretty well documented. So I don't know. Like the older ones, I could see that because it's like playing the telephone game. And like one thing gets translated into another until there's a generation of people who don't understand it at all and then call it a flying temple.
Well, I'll throw this at you. I don't know if I've said this one to you before, but like I've always had this thought. It's like kind of like a joke, but it kind of connects. Is that fish are like birds to crabs?
Yeah, Socrates said something like that.
Really? Oh, shit. I thought I came up with that.
I mean, if you did, you did. If you didn't hear it from Socrates, then technically you came up with it. Socrates. Yeah, he said, like, the way... Oh, what was it? Like, the way crabs and fish don't know anything about the world of men, men don't know anything about the world of the gods.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's like the same idea. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's intrinsic now. Intrinsic?
That's not a word.
What's the word I'm trying to say?
Intrinsic?
Intrinsic, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean...
Intrinsient.
Layers. Irregardless. We can make up words all day like irregardless, and we'll get nowhere.
Apparently, we'll get back after this, but apparently Einstein would make words up all the time.
I mean, as a research scientist, you probably have to place words on concepts you're imagining.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was German. All they do is make up words. I mean, that's their whole language.
Yeah, you could just like...
they just glue words together to make a new word.
Okay. I'm sorry, now I'm spiraling, but we need this. Oh, wait, we're going to get back to... Because I want to ask you questions about... John Keel.
Johnny Keel. Good old Mothman. The Mothman guy.
Yeah. So the Mothman is like a great place to start because I still don't understand what it is. The longest German word is...
Oh, God.
Kraftfahrzeug Hauptpflichtversicherung.
What?
Which is the word for a motor vehicle liability insurance.
That's nothing.
I don't know if that's accurate, but anyway.
You've seen those Welsh words that are like fucking 48 letters long.
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
Okay, so John Keel, the Mothman. What?
Yeah, I mean, in West Virginia, people were seeing some weird winged creature, had red glowing eyes. People had been seeing that shit for 200 plus years. I mean, Native Americans used to talk about the Mothman. They called it something else. Sometimes they would call it like the Wendigo or the demon spirit of the forest. They'd give it different names. But contemporary people called it the Mothman.
Like the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like probably the same or a similar phenomenon. And it has like a kind of telepathic connection to people. Like people would hear voices in their heads, like it would talk to them and say things. Sometimes it would like prophesy a future event, and it was like slightly accurate. And he was a journalist, an investigative journalist, and he was just very open-minded, very objective and unbiased, and always just tried to get to the bottom of things. So he heard about all these reports of a Mothman, so he went to check it out. And so he was talking to witnesses, asking their stories. They describe it, a winged creature, kind of like 6 foot to 7 foot tall. You can't really see details because you only really see it at night. It's red glowing eyes, like that classic just cartoon character monster. And while he was investigating, he would go to a witness.
So not to...
Yeah, go ahead.
He never experienced it himself?
Oh, he did.
He did?
I'm getting into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So he was talking to witnesses, and the witnesses are like, we already answered all your questions. And he's like, what? He's like, you were here this morning. He's like, no, I wasn't. He had a doppelganger going around harassing witnesses of the Mothman before he questioned them.
What?
Like just hours before each of his witnesses, the witnesses would complain that he came back and that he's asking them questions about the Mothman again.
Do they know who this person was?
No, but it looked identical to him. What? Yeah. Somebody even took a photograph and showed him, and it was him, which is one of the reasons why he became so paranoid, because he had a doppelganger that was harassing his witnesses.
Yeah.
And he heard voices in his head during the investigations where or it was a dream, I think, with a voice attached to it that was like something terrible was going to happen, like a building was going to burn down and like 100+ people were going to die or something like that. And he was like concerned because he had heard of other things related to the Mothman that had come true. Like he had heard that like a farmer's his barn was going to burn down, and then it did a couple days later and stuff like that. So he like took it seriously and was like telling the police, like, I think something bad is going to happen to like a building. Like you should get the fire department to like look for faulty wires and stuff like that all over this town in West Virginia, Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Oh yeah.
And nobody took him seriously. And then like a few days later, a car bridge collapsed, and like 60 people died. And so it was like accurate, not accurate. Yeah, and it was on the date that the Mothman said that this building would burn down and people died. It was the exact same date, but it was a different disaster. So it was like, accurate, not accurate.
And it was off by like 40 people.
Yeah. But the thing is there was some sort of weird thing that he was tuned into that like he knew that there was a disaster about to occur, some type of loss of life disaster in this area at this time, and he was just kind of clued into this sort of field, this kind of energy field or something that like clued him in, and it was related to the Mothman because he was investigating the Mothman when it happened, and in the dream I think the Mothman came to him, like he saw the Mothman and then saw this disaster occurring, the burning building or whatever, I can't remember, I think it was a burning building that he saw, and then after that he got into...
That's why I don't like B&Bs.
What?
Like bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
It's like burning building.
Oh, yeah. No, that's creepy. You just put that in the heads of all of our audience. Burning building. But yeah, he got into paranormal research after that. That like changed his life.
Oh, wow.
And he started looking into UFOs and stuff. And that's when he started, for the rest of his life, he had run-ins with the so-called men in black, who he were convinced were not humans. Because he would he noticed strange behavior about them.
Humanoid.
Yeah, like that there was some type of simulacra of a human.
What's simulacra?
Like a fake version.
Okay, yeah.
Simulation.
Yeah, because I was looking up on some of those experience details of people that experienced whatever that was, and they all, and it crossed almost all the way across the U.S. All these different places, they all said that their clothes was perfectly pristine, more than normal, and when they would sit down, they would see a green wire on their leg with a brown circle around it, almost like it was running into their leg. and they would do bizarre things, like they'd get up and leave and walk out like in a single file line.
Mm-hmm. They didn't understand humor or jokes.
Yeah, and like the one that I was listening to, like the one guy, like the one Man in Black was actually like with like a woman, I think, and he was like rubbing her leg, and he said to the person he was interviewing, like, is this how you, am I doing this right, or is this wrong?
Right.
Or something like, just like very, very strange, bizarre, like behavior. Yeah. And I think the other thing was like they would ask questions as if they already knew the answer. Mm-hmm. And then, the strangest one was where the guy was interviewing someone that had a paranormal experience, and the person that was interviewed said that like they didn't think it was strange that they let them into their house even though they didn't show any credentials. Mm-hmm. And then towards the end of the conversation, they started talking slower and slower and slower and slower, and then they stood up and were like, my energy is low, I must leave. And then just walked to the door and like foot by foot, like slowly went down like the stairs, and then like a black car showed up and they got in and just like took off. Mm-hmm. It's like, where, like, are people just making these stories up, writing it and putting it on the internet? Or it was like, I mean,
some of them probably, I mean,
yeah,
statistically
like,
speaking,
for sure. Yeah. But like, I mean, a lot of these accounts are from like pre-internet.
Oh, yeah. The Men in Black were huge in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the earliest accounts are probably true accounts, for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would anybody lie about that? Because it ruined their reputations whenever somebody would talk about a story like this. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, you're just doing it for attention or fame or money. It's like, trust me, you don't want that kind of attention. You talk about this stuff, especially in the 60s, during like the Red Scare and all that, your life would be destroyed. If you talked about UFOs, Men in Black, and stuff. Nobody did it for attention.
Oh, during the Red Scare specifically? Why is that?
Well, because everybody was super paranoid.
About everything.
And everybody was like, just do what the government tells you, believe what the government tells you to believe, and don't say anything else.
That's the Cold War?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like there's just so much pressure from the government for people to just, this is what you believe, this is the truth. If anyone says anything else, they're a fucking communist.
How funny is it like that? Like we've traditionally been afraid of Russia.
Well, no, the government traditionally wants us to be afraid of Russia. We've always been allies with Russia.
Yeah.
You know, they helped us in the Civil War. They helped us in World War II. Oh, yeah. The North would have lost the Civil War without Russia.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you know, the Southern Army was just a handful of dudes. There weren't that many people in the South. It was like very sparsely populated, and especially people who were willing to fight for the South were very few people, only a couple thousand people. The vast majority of soldiers were Central and Northern European mercenaries hired by English bankers that were being shipped into America to just keep the war going, because as long as the war went, people could sell weapons, the bankers could destabilize the economy, and they'd make loads of money. If America's in a destabilized, weakened state, bankers make a ton of money. So they were hiring mercenaries and just sending them to the South.
Who, Russia was?
No, the English.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So where does Russia come in with helping with the Civil War?
They blockaded the ports to prevent mercenaries from being able to get into the country. And so therefore Southern forces depleted, and the North was able to win. And the war ended. Because,
holy shit, that makes so much sense. Because, like, how could, like, a bunch of ragtag buds fuck up one of the biggest, Great Britain at the time, right? I mean, that's what that was.
Well, wait, who? What?
Oh no, I'm thinking about the Revolution,
or the War of 1812.
Yeah,
and this was a few decades later.
Wait, so the South was getting?
Yeah, they were mostly mercenaries.
From where?
From Norway, Germany, Austria, some English, some French.
Really? Yeah. Why? But what was their interest? Like, what are they going to get out of it? Like,
money. They were just mercenaries. Oh. They were just paid soldiers.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, that's how most wars are actually fought, is bankers hire mercenaries. Like, America's involvement in the Middle East.
Contractors.
Yeah. 83, I think it was 80 or 83% of all the soldiers from 2001 up to today in the Middle East were mercenaries. They weren't even the American military. The vast majority of fighting in the Middle East has been done by mercenaries, not the U.S. Army or Marines or Navy or Air Force. And a lot of people don't know that.
Is that true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of the big, you look at Blackwater Mercenary Group. They don't exist anymore. They got, because they were found guilty of war crimes, so they dissolved and just renamed themselves. They're like called G9 now or something like that. But yeah, they, almost all wars have always just been fought by mercenaries since like the 19th century. It's just like the new thing. You just hire private militaries and pretend like...
Well, the new thing's going to be just AI.
Maybe. That's how you get Skynet.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, get rid of, like, the mercenaries and, like, calling people in. It's like, we could just, like, spend the same amount of money, but, like, get more out of it. And it's just, like, it's fixable.
Yeah.
It's like a mercenary could go to war, die, and it's like, ah, shit, we paid them the money, and now they're gone. Where, like, AI could be like, oh,
yeah, it's just
they caught one on the CPU. Just put a new one in.
Yeah, there are lots of reasons
for a fraction of cost, and they'll just keep going.
Yeah,
bing bong.
Yep. Yeah, there are loads of reasons why people would want to do that, and just the military-industrial complex just makes loads of money simply by selling robots.
It's so freaking scary. Like, you've seen these like military robots.
Oh yeah, and then
like the
PR
dog one with the 4 legs. It's like,
and the one that looks like a person that can do backflips and shit.
Yo, it is horrifying.
Yeah, and the military-industrial complex and Boston Dynamics are like, we promise we're not going to put guns on them. Pinky promise.
Yeah,
like, go fuck yourself.
Right. They already have done that shit. I mean, that's the thing that John Keel's tripping out about is like this. If we're seeing that technology on Instagram now, it's like the same argument that we said previously is like the government isn't going to show you their completely classified things.
Yeah, if you can see Boston Dynamic dog bots on Instagram, then what they're really using is way more advanced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, because also John Keel, I was like, he was in the army. He was in the Korean War.
Yeah.
So, like, he understood on some level the military-industrial complex as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's other things that he never divulged because he'd get a fucking to the face if he said that he knew. So it's like he's like playing like a ballet. Yeah. With all this crazy crap. I mean, and you could say that you sound like a kook for saying that type of stuff. A kook, like CEO. Is that a bad word?
Oh, I'm sure the left wants to make it a bad word.
What does that even mean? Like, I thought it just means like you're like a nut.
Yeah, cuckoo. Like it's a bird that makes a funny sound.
Okay, like a cuckoo.
Yeah.
A cuckoo bird.
It's just because a bird just makes a funny sound. So people just associate it with being weird.
I just said it and it sounded like I was saying a slur. But yeah, just like a crazy person or whatever. But like you have to question this type of shit.
Yeah.
And like clearly, if someone's like going that hard, they're like dedicating their entire existence to something that's so specific, and like for real, dude, like, you know how hard that is to do, like to fight that. It's like there had to be something. Like if he was a complete cuckoo bird, like it maybe be like 1 or 2 articles or books, right, and then he just like spirals out and like goes into psychosis. Right. He put so much work into trying to like push these
45 years of his life he gave to that research.
It's like he really was researching something. So you have to take it at some level of merit, at least because of the level of like effort that he put in into this insane information. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I consider John Keel one of my personal heroes, honestly. Like, I think he learned something and was unbiased enough about it to be able to clearly report on it. When talking about paranormal stuff, you get a lot of researchers who have, like, a pet theory that they want to prove. They want to prove these flying saucers are from another planet, that they're flesh and blood aliens, and they're obsessed with that, what we call the ETH, or the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And they just believe it like a religion, and they want everything to be an alien, and everything they see becomes an alien. And then there are people who, think Bigfoot is like a real animal or a real creature that lives in the woods, where other people are like, well, but it disappears sometimes. You know, it doesn't just walk back into a cave. We never found skeletons. We find footprints that just end in the middle of muddy fields. Like, these things just vanish. And like the zoologist, like, no, I don't want to hear that. You know, no, it's an animal. We can find it somewhere. And like, nobody wants to look at the whole bizarre, absurd thing about it, because it's really bizarre and absurd. It doesn't like fit with certain theories and paradigms. You know, you see this one instance of a UFO that came down. I think both John Keel and Jacques Vallée wrote about this, and it was like a hole. It wasn't like a flying saucer, like a metal object. It looked like a metal object in the distance. And then when it got close to this farmer, it just looked like a hole in the middle of the air, like a window. He called it a window. And it would move around and fly around. And in it were people sitting at like this high-tech kitchen inside. It was like a room, like a window into a kitchen. And then these aliens asked this farmer for a pitcher of water and make sure that there's no salt in the water. And then they cooked these like corn pancakes and gave the farmer two of these pancakes. And he ate one and he gave the other to the FDA to test. And it was just a normal pancake, except one thing, it had no salt in it. And like, that was this guy's alien encounter experience. And UFO researchers fucking hate it when you bring this one up. They don't want to talk about it because it's too weird. It's like, no, that didn't happen. Like, the guy's full of shit. It's like, it has to be aliens. There's nothing that weird that happens.
Like cornbread or something?
Yeah, it's just cornbread. Just regular old cornbread.
Cornbread's good.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, it had no salt. And you know that old saying where, like, if the devil's over your shoulder, you throw salt in its eye?
Yeah, or if you spill the salt, throw it over your left shoulder for good luck. Yeah,
well, it's to get rid of the devil. And magicians will pour a salt circle around themselves to protect themselves from spiritual entities.
What's with the salt thing?
They don't like salt, apparently. And it's like these aliens or these people in this flying kitchen asked for water without salt. They cook cornbread without salt. Normally,
don't give them Dasani.
Yes, mineral water. Yeah.
It's got salt in it.
Yeah, like, no mineral water, please.
No Dasani.
Yeah. So there's like that absurd factor.
I want that Fiji shit, dude.
Yeah. And the thing that's great about John Keel is, like, he didn't care. He didn't have any pet theory he was trying to prove. He just...
But isn't corn, like, bad for you too?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a health expert.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I've been eating corn my whole life. I feel fine. But I know some people are sensitive to gluten and stuff, so they don't like to eat corn. But
that's fucking.
Yeah. So what I really like about John Keel is his just unbiased. Like, I don't have a theory to prove. I just want to investigate this to the best of my ability and just find out all the facts. Where do the facts lead? What's going on here? And he came to that idea of the superspectrum. Like, I think these things are coming from what I'll call the superspectrum. And he kind of began to theorize when he saw patterns amongst all these different paranormal phenomena, whether it's Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, UFOs. He saw them as all the same, emanating from the same source, which he then called the superspectrum. And lately, I've been applying that thinking to like that sort of traditional idea of the eighth sphere, that the superspectrum and the eighth sphere are probably the same thing. And that's like this realm that's sort of around the Earth, and it sort of uses matter that comes from the Earth to create confusing illusions, to sort of mislead humanity into certain areas. You know, in the religious sense, people think these are demons. You know, they're like a negative influence or whatever. New Agers call them like negative entities or something. There's some sort of intelligent force that draws matter away from the Earth and creates strange objects with it, and basically screws with humans. And this is what you know, you could call the trickster. You know.
Well, I mean, it's okay. So I don't know why that made me think of this, but it's like did you say electromagnetic fields?
Yeah, that's how John Keel characterized it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you can, I don't know, it made me think of the thing where, like, they changed the frequency of middle C.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The reference pitch for the standard Western scale.
Yeah, because it's a vibration. It is a magnetic field, a vibration. So by changing it, they felt that they were able to scramble your perception a little bit to have a little more control.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, like, they have so many recordings of, like, ancient tribes that have not been touched by any technology, and they sing their middle C is specifically, what is it? It's 528
instead of like
548,
yeah, something like
or
that.
something like that.
It's a little higher, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's the same kind of idea. So then again, let's go back to that quote. Is what did he say? This is like totally what the, oh yeah, my face. I'm trying to keep the bugs out, Mothman, you know.
Yeah, we're on a high-speed fan boat, and there's just bugs getting in our eyes.
Well, no, the Mothman.
Oh, keep the moth. I just got it. Oh, man.
Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah, they are not from outer space. There is no need for them to be. They have always been here, right? So that could mean one of two things, I suppose. It could be that there is other, like, species or existence that are in hiding, like, you know, like the things where people live inside of the earth under the ocean. It could, you know, like whatever, you could trip on that. Or it could just be that, like, a lot of these phenomenon is just higher up governments with way intense technology and using that as a scapegoat.
I think it's all of these things. I think
you have to both.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different phenomena out there.
Yeah.
And you have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis and who it's interacting with and why. Because, you know, I think some of it, there's secret military craft that can behave in weird ways. There's illusions made by the eighth sphere or the superspectrum. There are probably, like, survivors from Atlantis who still live in hidden cultures who still have that technology. Yeah. There are probably corporations who can use this technology. There are probably occultists and sorcerers who can make you see these things.
You could look at, like, different, like, smaller versions of it. You know, it's like every single thing that you say around your phone or you type into your phone is going into a bank and then being sold as information so that it's marketing towards your footprint on the internet so that they can be like, oh, he was talking about Vans shoes. Let's show him this, like, Vans shoe ad, and we'll sell that information to Vans, and then Vans will put money back. Then we take that money back from them for putting the ad, and now shoes pop up, and they're going to make money because you can be like, oh, those tight shoes, and you buy it.
Yeah.
Boom. Right? It's the same kind of thing. It's mental control. And wasn't it Hytel that came up with the change of the frequency for middle C?
The German guy.
Yeah, Hytel.
Yeah. Yep, he changed the temperament of the standard Western scale. Yeah, and that was right after World War I, right before World War II.
Yeah.
And some people are like, well, it's just because they wanted to have a global standard so that they could start mass producing musical instruments. And it's like, that's one thing, and that's a good reason for it, sure. They wanted to mass produce compositions so every orchestra could play them. I agree with that.
Yeah, but why change it?
Why specifically to what he did?
The frequency.
Yeah, like, why not?
Well, it wasn't Hytel that came up with it, though.
Oh, it was a whole council of people. He
just backed it.
Yeah, it was a whole council of people who decided on that.
Yeah.
And it's like, why that specific change?
Yeah. Scramble your thoughts. Scramble your everything.
You could have chosen a good frequency, but you didn't.
and the standard frequency that they recorded, like the base frequency, middle C, right, of, like, ancient tribes and all this type of stuff where they're untouched by technology, I already said, is the frequency that some of the greatest artists ever would tune to, right? Like the Beatles.
Yeah. Bach.
Bob Marley.
Kernberger.
Bach, Kernberger. Holst did too? Who else? Like
Werkmeister.
I don't know if Michael Jackson did.
No, he didn't.
I know the Beatles mostly did.
Yeah, by the 80s.
And Bob Marley.
People lost control of that if you were a pop star.
Yeah.
It was what the producers wanted. The artists had little control in the 80s.
But there's a reason behind why that music is so...
Yeah, why people still like it.
Heartwarming and comforting. It's because it's like the mother frequency. Right?
Yeah, when I was in university, I did an experiment with this idea. I took the 12-tone Western scale and how it is standard. So it's A440 is the standard. And then you tune the scale from that. And then there's if you tune the scale to A432 and have an equal temperament scale, I took all 24 of those notes, and we had these special freezers in the science lab, and I took petri dishes of water and I subjected them to this tone just from a little speaker I put in the freezer.
Oh, shit.
And I froze water crystals being subjected to these various frequencies. I hot glued the petri dish to the speaker, so it was like a tight seal and a tight connection, and I would get these water crystals, and then I would look at them under a microscope, and every single water crystal in the A440 equal temperament 12-tone scale was like cacophonous and chaotic. If you did equal temperament 432 reference, about 5
of them... 4, not 5, sorry. Yeah.
Well, C would be 500 something. I'm talking about A. They usually use A as the reference pitch.
Yeah, 432.
Yeah.
That was the number of... Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could use any note as a reference pitch.
It had like a much deeper...
Yeah, 5 of the notes had symmetrical, like snowflake-looking ones. Yeah. And then the other 7 notes were chaotic. And then I took the... Then I realized, okay, so I had no symmetrical water crystals from the 440, and a few from the 432. And then so I decided to use 432 for a reference pitch for 2 other scales, the Werkmeister scale, which was the one that Johann Bach uses, and then the Rudolf Steiner scale of 12/5, which is very similar to the Werkmeister with slight differences. And the Werkmeister scale had 10 out of 12 notes were symmetrical ice crystals. And the Rudolf Steiner scale had all 12 notes were symmetrical water crystals. No cacophonous ones at all.
Wow.
So, your body is like 70 to 80% water, and you're going to be listening to music. Obviously, what do you want to be listening to? Do you want to listen to stuff that's going to be chaotic and cacophonous, or do you want stuff that's going to make your water molecules symmetrical and well-functioning? And so, like, people are like, oh, there's no such thing, it's a conspiracy theory talking about 440 versus 432. No, it's not. Just freeze some water crystals. I did it myself. It's absolutely true. There's no conspiracy theory here. It's just a conspiracy fact. Yeah, these people changed the tuning temperament, and now we all listen to cacophonous music. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Whether they did it on purpose or not, whatever. I don't know these guys' motivations, but the fact of the matter is, we listen to cacophonous music.
Science is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know who to blame. I don't know if it was an accident, whatever. You can debate that, and that could be your conspiracy theory.
I thought it started with Hytel.
Yeah, probably. I mean, but yeah, Bach probably knew this stuff. Like, I don't know if he like froze water crystals and looked at them under microscopes in the early 19th century, but he probably like, you have the guys who built Rosslyn Chapel, but I think they're Templars, and they have these strange blocks that are actually cymatic shapes. Like a cymatic shape is like when you look at a standing wave,
like chimera.
No, chyma.
Cymatic?
Yeah, Cyma. That's Greek for wave.
Oh, okay.
So, like, if you subject a medium to a sound, like water, for instance, it will make a wave, an image in the water.
Oh, yeah. Like the things where they do different frequencies with salt or sand.
Exactly. The
beautiful
chladni plates, those are called. Yeah, that's precisely what it is. You look at different cymatic shapes in the sand on the plate, depending on the frequency that you subject it to. And these researchers in the 90s realized that all these blocks in Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland are actually musical notes. They're like, it'll be like concentric diamonds with a circle in the middle, or concentric circles, or like a bunch of circles. And they're just these little blocks like this big all over. And at the top of each column, there's like dozens of these columns, will be a little carving of a person playing a particular music instrument. And they realized that the whole chapel is a song, that this person in the musical instrument with this instrument played these 12 notes, this person with the flute carved over here played these notes, and they realized like those are all notes. And so these people in the 13th century saw these cymatic shapes somehow, probably under the influence of drugs, or maybe they had a clairvoyant with them, who knows, but they were able to, or maybe they just did the sand thing.
They did the sand thing, like, or maybe they just, they didn't have the fucking internet and
Well, how do they? My point is, how do they see the standing waves?
Meditating and all these type of things.
Like
they were more connected to like.
That's what I mean when they had a clairvoyant with them.
Yeah, which is like real reality. I mean, like, it's like, how do they make this? It's like, well, they had a year where they had nothing to do and no distractions. So they focused and made something magnificent. Mm-hmm. They had a more long-term, like, consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Precisely.
Yeah, that's fucking amazing.
Yeah. And one of those notes is exactly 432 hertz, by the way, that they found in Rosslyn Chapel.
Yeah, I said 5 whatever, but it's 432.
When you use the Rudolf Steiner scale of 12/5 or the Werckmeister scale that Bach used...
Oh, but you're saying that's A.
Well, the A would be 432 hertz, and then there's A sharp, and B and C would be 528 hertz in that temperament.
Oh, 28. Yeah.
So, like,
gotcha.
You could use C528 as your reference pitch, and that's the same.
Yeah, but normally why is it normally A?
It's because A, B, C, D, it's the first letter of the alphabet.
I've always, like, looked at C as, like...
Well, that's concert C. That was something that composers did because back when writing notation was new in the early Renaissance.
I'm going to start writing only starting from A.
Yeah, that's what I started doing because
that's cool.
Musical instruments back then, certain flutes and certain stringed instruments had a very limited range, and the lowest note they could play was a middle C. So that's why they started at middle C, was because that would be the open note that like the bower would play.
Gotcha.
Because that's the lowest note they could possibly tune without it going loose.
Yeah.
So just that's like a traditional thing that they
like
start with C. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But with these days, we have really nice musical instruments, guitars, synthesizers, really good trombones.
We could do anything.
We can do anything.
We could do anything with anything.
It's like you should probably start with A. It's the first freaking letter of the alphabet. Like, why not? It's just easier to think about, in my opinion. When I don't start the alphabet with C and end on B. You know what I mean? It's
alpha, beta, cis, douche.
Yep.
ABCD.
ABCD. But yeah, it's interesting stuff, and the cacophonous side of things.
Sorry, that was rude. That's kind of funny.
Yeah,
it's like Dave Chappelle's The Alphabet People.
Oh God, that was a funny joke.
Get in trouble for that. It's jokes, though. It's just jokes.
I should wear my Subgenius T-shirt. Fuck them if they can't take a joke.
What's Subgenius?
Oh, the Church of the Subgenius?
Yeah, I don't know.
It was like this kind of counterculture religion that came out of the 70s. It's hilarious. It's the funniest shit. We'll get into this. Maybe we should do a video on the Subgenius.
We'll do it.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
I gotta go research.
The one true Bob.
All right, babe. I think it's time.
Yeah, 55 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm just going by feel.
Feel? You felt the hour go by?
Yeah, right? I mean, is there anything else that we need to like kind of like put in for
well, I mean,
what's his name? I can't remember.
John Keel.
John Keel.
We kind of covered Keel, but it brings us into the idea of the eighth sphere, which we can then branch out into technology and transhumanism.
Yes.
But that could be an entire episode.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to squeeze that.
Yeah, the eighth sphere is like a lot.
Unfold it. Yeah. But it ties in with John Keel and paranormal phenomena, so we'll have a part 2. We'll do a part 2.
Part 2
of the Superspectrum, the eighth sphere, the paranormal trippiness. Mm-hmm. We'll carry on this conversation maybe next week. And so this was a primer for how weird things can get in this world and in your mind.
Premier.
Pla. How do you say it in French? Pla.
Really?
Oh, how they pronounce their R's after their P's? It's the worst. And croissant. Croissant.
Croissant.
The French language, man.
I love French.
Learn how to... You do?
Mm-hmm.
I wish they used their own alphabet.
It's a beautiful language.
Oh, God, I think it's baby talk.
Oh, it's so fancy.
I'm sorry, but EAUX does not spell and OIST does not spell
language.
Wah. Dude, we pronounce it exactly the way it's written.
No, we don't.
What? So that we have a few PHs pronounced as Fs and a few GHs that are silent?
We have a lot of really friggin' messed up stuffs.
OIST. Wah. Give me a break.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I'm gonna find it. I'll show it to you after. There's some Gallagher does a thing on it.
The watermelon guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The watermelon. Yeah. All right.
So thanks for tuning in, guys.
And we'll do part 2 on.
And we'll do part 2 next week.
The eighth sphere.
The eighth sphere.
All right. Love you.